Ken, to do what you and I do, to be independent musicians, to do this podcast, to be out there on YouTube and that sort of thing, we have to have some thick skin, right? And we'll talk about the social media comments in a little bit too. We'll get to that. But yeah, that's mental toughness to me is really just a state of mind where you're confident in taking firm steps of action and really not letting the outside world impact your vision for your life.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's difficult to find that for yourself when you're young, which to me, I was always also pretty self-reserved. I'm very much an introvert, but I can be extroverted when I want to be. But when I was growing up, I was very much like shy and trying to kind of hide away most of the time. My brother, I remember when I was about 15, 16 years old, he got me involved in doing things that were, basically like sales, marketing and stuff like that, and helping kind of help him to start his own business and stuff like that. And I remember I was, going out into the streets trying to get people to come down to conferences and stuff like that, and new recruits and whatnot. And I think it was an MLM, to be honest, but
I remember those, dude. I've been in plenty.
Yeah, we were trying to do this thing, and I was learning quite a bit about, just how to talk to people. And that was a very important part of my life in terms of gaining the skill to be able to be in front of others and try to express myself clearly, So when I got to college, I was already out of that business. I decided that was definitely not for me, and I decided to pursue music. But I remember I had recently broken up with a girlfriend, and I just went into this almost kind of laser focused hibernation mode of just working on my own self-esteem and working on my own work, music wise and technique wise and drumming wise. And that was a really transformative part of my life. I think I went several years without being in a relationship, and I just honed in on, this is what I was doing. This is what I was doing. This is what I was doing. Yeah, I guess there are some drawbacks to that. You kind of get a little awkward with certain things in life, but it was a really good part of my upbringing. I felt it was strengthening my will and determination on what I wanted to do. I feel like many times our mental toughness, it doesn't come so much from like inspirational quotes and all this kind of stuff, but it comes from having to go through crap and having to be a little traumatized, to be honest. And from that experience, you grow from out of your shell, and you start to understand what matters to you and what doesn't. You have to go through that process to really realize how strong you actually really are. In my opinion,
focus has a lot to do with that too, man. You're talking about you and guys, we go through seasons in life. We go through phases, and I like to call them seasons because just like our 4 seasons that we have, which I live in Florida, we really only have 2 seasons. It's either stupid hot or not as hot. Up there in New York, and you've got seasons, right?
Yeah.
And just as the leaves change colors, and just as they die off and they fall and then they come back again, so 'tis our life, if you want to put it that way. And I think that some of those seasons require immense focus. And I think that's a way to build mental toughness, because during the time you were focusing, and it's not like you were focused on something negative, you were focused on something that you want to do with your life. I think that's almost a requirement if you want to be great at something. And I look at someone like you. You're still, what are you in your? I know we're talking age now, dude. I'm almost 48. I'll be 48 in May. You're what, Ken? You're
30. Turning 31 in March.
such a young dude, right, to be a full-time musician, to be an educator, right? I mean, we're educators on Metal Mastermind, but you're also teaching college level courses as well. You're a professional audio engineer. So that time that you were mentally tough enough to block everything out and zero in and focus, I think that's a form of building mental toughness as well. And that's something I did not do in my early years. I played guitar. That was a really sharp focus that I always had. One of the things that helped me, though, you're talking about going through certain things. Being a smaller kid, of course, I was picked on a lot. So I decided, hey, I'm going to start lifting weights, So I started lifting weights around the time I started playing guitar. I was 14 around that time, picked up guitar at 15. And that was one of the things, and I never turned into a big bodybuilder or anything like that. It took me years to pack on size, but I did that as kind of to give me more mental toughness. I was doing it for different reasons. I'm like, well, maybe I'll get a girlfriend if I get jacked, or maybe nobody will pick on me at least, And it turned into something I just fell in love with, and that one thing, even through some of the really poor decision making I made in my 20s and even early 30s, that kept me from going completely over the edge, many times in life. So there were times where I were not mentally tough in some areas, but I had this other focus that kind of kept me from going way over the edge, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And to be honest, what we share in all of that is just a huge love for metal.
Mm-hmm.
That genre of music, and this is why we do what we do for metal musicians, is metal has always been there as an escape.
Yeah.
You get into a funk and you put on some Megadeth, or you put on Holy Wars and you're just like,
oh man,
really rocking out, right? You get all this angst, or you go into a show and you get into the pit and you release all that anger into the pit, and it's healing, right? So you get all these sort of mental blockages, in a sense, like removed from yourself when you listen to metal. And that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. It's a great form of just listening. You get music as a very, not only exciting and aggressive form of music, but it's also many times a very intelligently written. And
thank you for listening to that short clip of our latest podcast on Metal Mastermind. Be sure to listen to the entire podcast on metalmastermind.com. You can just click on podcast there, or go to Spotify or Google Play. There are links in the description of this video. I want to say thank you so much for supporting and being a part of Metal Mastermind. And hey, drop us a comment if you have some things that you would like for us to cover in future podcasts. We'll see you on the next show. And remember, create your own sound and style.